This podcast is part of the Michigan Sports and Entertainment Podcast Network. Go to michigansportsandentertainment.com for more great podcasts.
Hey everyone, this is Austin.
What's going on, guys? This is John.
And you're listening to the Voice of the Fan Sports Podcast. All right, John. Week 1 college football is wrapped up. Some good news for the Spartans fans out there with a win over Tulsa. Some interesting defensive facts. I mean, minus 73 yards rushing. That's like a video. It doesn't even happen in a video game.
Yeah,
like,
it's
impossible. So that's exciting. Flip side, not so great for Purdue. We lost on a heartbreaker. I don't really need to go into that. I already did enough of it. So
you don't feel like ranting again?
That's right. This Michigan State team, starting off as expected, 1-0 against a very easy opponent, a tune-up game, so to speak. It looks like the defense is pretty tuned in. I don't know about the offense, John, but why don't you go ahead and take us in there?
Well, the offense took a hit today, losing Jalen Naylor for the season, apparently. No, official word from the team, but Graham Couch, a writer for the Lansing State Journal, who's a pretty credible guy, has said that he's heard that he's out for the season. So, huge hit. Arguably, he was my breakout guy this year, sophomore. He actually had a huge play against Purdue last year on a wide receiver reverse where Rocky Lombardi was running in front of him for like a 50-yard touchdown. So, explosive guy, but, next man up, I guess, which was a theme of last season, which is not really what I want to see, but here we are. So what we'll go over today is recap the win versus Tulsa, which, is going to be pretty quick. Preview the game a little bit versus Western. Will we see a different offense come Saturday? The O-line woes. How long should we give Michigan State to kind of fix the offense this season? And then we're going to debut our Voice of the Fan Pick'em this episode. Each week I'll pick, obviously, the 2 games between Michigan State and whoever Purdue is playing. And then I'll do my 5 favorite games of the weekend. We'll be picking against the spread as well. So, and then if we had any surprises from week 1 or any bold predictions for week 2, we will talk about that. And then any quick recruiting updates, which there is some interesting news developing in basketball. So, just to jump into things, like Austin said, defense played as advertised. A little disappointed they gave up a touchdown, to be honest. Real world problems, right?
Yeah. Oh, darn. They gave up a touchdown.
But if you watch the flow of the game, they just dominated Tulsa, and I almost felt bad for their quarterback because he was either getting a horrible snap from their center, who I think had 4 botched snaps in the first half, or he was getting pummeled by Michigan State's D-line. So he was not having a fun night. They put together one good drive off of a 3rd and 13 Kenny Willekes roughing the passer penalty. Stupid. And that's where they got their touchdown on a 47-yard bomb and in the end zone 1-on-1 coverage. But other than the defense having negative 73 rushing yards against them, a couple forced turnovers, which is a huge emphasis for them this season, and pretty much the D-line doing whatever they want with that Tulsa O-line in the second half especially. Really no surprise there from the defense dominating elite Tulsa team, Austin. Am I right?
Oh, yeah. Big-time elite program. Yeah. Just down game. Down game.
Yes, down game for them. Getting into this offense started off promising. I even texted Austin right. I was like, man, we scored a touchdown. First drive, I'm like, all right. It was a nice little drive. First play of the game, Lewerke scrambles out of the pocket a little bit. Well, not the first play, but the first big play. The first play of the game, we already got what Mark D'Antonio calls the run up the middle. Real fun. Lewerke runs outside and then gets pummeled out of bounds, gets a unnecessary roughness call, and they had another, I think a defensive holding call, so it was 25 yards added onto the play. And then they got inside the red zone, threw a little screen to Connor Hayward, little shifty move into the end zone, and that was the only offensive touchdown all game. So I guess we'll start with the offensive line, Austin. And when you have to start your starting right guard at left tackle, not generally a good sign. I would, not what you would really want.
Yeah, no, that's bad.
So, he actually played okay there, but you want him at guard where he's best. Cole Chewin, still no news on him. What's going on there? I have no clue what's going on with AJ Curry. There's no injury reported. They're not commenting on the situation, so I don't know what's going on with him. So for right now, I'm assuming we're going to send out the same O-line starting against Western, but you would have to hope that you would see Devontae Dobbs at least come in to play some snaps. I mean, Austin loved our offensive line recruiting class's film. I mean, I would think it's time to give young guys a shot. You don't really want to start an all-freshman O-line, obviously, which, one of our loyal Twitter followers, asked if we should start get all the freshmen in, but you don't want all of them at the same time. But I think it's about time they get some reps, don't you, Austin? I mean, if you can't get any push against Tulsa's defensive line, I mean, what do you expect come Big Ten season?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to come down. You've got a really good defensive line to practice against, and the freshman is not going to go in there and push them around. But if he can get something out of them, they're just going to make him better. And really with offensive linemen, it comes down to technique and strength. And I think a couple of those guys have the technique, which will help them in the strength area because you don't always need to be the strongest guy to move stuff. Obviously, it helps in college football. No brainer there. But I think I'm with you, especially if you're already shuffling people around. You brought in a guy like Devontae Dobbs that was a 5-star recruit. Typically, those guys are ones that are on the cusp or pushing for time anyway. I'm sure he's dressing. I don't think he...
Yeah, he was dressing. He's dressed.
Yeah, he's not... There's no intent to pure redshirt him. So I think Western, if you're going to have offensive line issues right now, a team, against maybe a Western Michigan, getting him in there, getting him some reps. And really, it just maybe even depends on how the game goes. If you want to keep some sort of solidity up front, use the same guys, but maybe put him in towards the end or in the middle when you're comfortable. If you need to either shake things up or you're with a lead and you trust your defense, get him some reps, get him some action, get a feel for what it's going to look like. Obviously, as you progress to better opponents, it's going to continue to look different, but those reps are invaluable. And again, when you bring in a guy that's highly touted like that, your expectation is for them to push for snaps, not sit on the bench and potentially redshirt. Obviously, different situations in other places, but that's kind of the general idea. They're there to make an impact right out of the gates because there's not a lot of good 5-star guys out there, especially offensive linemen. So, exactly. Yeah, I think I'm with you.
And especially at Michigan State, you generally don't get these top-tier recruits, let alone 5-star stud offensive line recruits. So I get that you want these guys to get experience, but I mean, even if he learned the system for a year and redshirted next year, he's still coming in with game snaps. So I mean, there's a time and a place where he's going to have to get those reps anyways. And when this O-line is as disastrous as it was week 1 against a bad Tulsa D-line, you got to make some changes. Understandably so, I guess. I don't hate that we're going with the same group. But, I mean, the press conference that D'Antonio had was positive, in my opinion, because he showed frustration with the offense for the first time in a long time that I can remember. Last year, it was always just, next man up, this and that, blah, 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 defending his coaching. Now he's frustrated. And you could see it in the game on Friday night in his face. He just looked disgusted anytime a fumble recovery, Kenny Willicus had. We're in the 25, and we gain 2 yards and kick a field goal. You could see the disgust in his face, so I'm excited and hopeful that D'Antonio's frustration might get a boost in his team, or maybe we see a change that we normally wouldn't. I think the only 2 freshman offensive line you see would be Dobbs and Nick Samick, who I'm pretty sure was one of your favorite guys that you watched on the film. And he was a low-tier guy, but heard raving things about him from camp. And then maybe Spencer Brown, another bigger tackle, lower-end 3-star guy, but athletic. So I don't think you're going to see all of them, but if the O-line woes continue, I think you got to input some new guys and see what happens. Because Jordan Reed, Tyler Higbee and Luke Campbell even were just atrocious. I mean, unnecessary holding penalties. I mean, just did not look like they were working, communicating well. Just pretty much problems everywhere. And as a guy, you are Austin, who watches film and you're good at breaking down offensive line, where I get frustrated with this is I feel like we are trying to still be a power type scheme offensive line. Where do you think they could try to go with more of like a quick hit zone type scheme as a blocking play as if more of like a Big 12 offensive line than a Big 10 offensive line? I mean, is it something you think you can change mid-season, or you think they're kind of just stuck going power the rest of the way and hoping for the best?
That's kind of a tough situation because changing from a power scheme, if that's what your offensive line coach is kind of known for or good at, and then trying to go into a zone read scheme, it is a big difference, and it's a big change. And I don't know if people really understand, what kind of changes go in there.
Right.
It's all sorts of different technique, your footwork, your hands, how you approach your blocks, your angles. I mean, everything is different when you change schemes. So if Michigan State went into this season with a power offensive line coach and they try to run zone, it would probably not go over very well. I think I draw from the example of the Dallas Cowboys. They obviously have a really good line. They underperformed in the first half of the season last year because they went from a zone scheme to a power scheme. They fired the power scheme offensive line coach and went back to a guy that was familiar with their zone scheme, and they instantly got better because that's what they were more comfortable with, and that's what they know. Obviously, at the NFL level, you're expected to be able to do both in some capacity. Obviously, not be able to do well at both. You have a scheme, that's why you stick to it. So at the college level, I can only imagine that you really want to install something like that early. A midseason switch would probably not work out too well. My guess is if they would try that, it would be really vanilla and easy things to incorporate and try and get going just to provide different looks. And if anything, if they're trying to get away from that, I mean, shotgun snaps is going to give you the best, spread everybody out, make it easy for your running backs to make quicker decisions. There shouldn't be as much, interference, so to speak. There shouldn't be as many men in the box to try and read and react to. That would be the only thing in my mind that you could kind of switch up without truly switching into a zone scheme, because everybody in the college level kind of has an inside zone scheme out of shotgun, but just more teams run it versus, you got teams like Wisconsin. That's a power football team.
Right.
They got big guys out there that can move people. And so that's what they do. They line up, they say, we're coming at you, and then you can't stop it. So like when I think power football, I think Wisconsin, I think Iowa, I think Alabama. They've been a little more spread, but Alabama still has a lot of power scheme to them. Just really teams that have big dudes up front. That's the difference. I know Michigan State used to have that, and I can't say whether that's still true or not. But if you have more, quick guys, that is a little bit more conducive to a zone scheme, just because you can make those really far outside reach blocks, or cross face of a 3-tech or a nose, and get them, cut them off to allow flow for the line. So the long-winded answer there, but I would say switching to a zone scheme, if they know power midseason, probably would not happen at the collegiate level.
See, that's why I love that we have this guy, because he can break down things that I would not be able to do so for you guys. So casual offensive line fans like me and a lot of other people on Twitter who think they know best, proven wrong right there. Do not change in the middle of the season, or it could be disastrous. So obviously O-line probably going to be an issue the rest of the season unless guys step up, which is, as a program, is something you just got to deal with. Obviously, you're going to deal with weaknesses on a team. O-line is not one that you want to deal with necessarily, but it is what it is. You scheme around it. You try to, quicker passes, stuff like that, more inside zone stuff. So we'll see what happens, obviously, against Western Michigan. Again, not a powerhouse of a program, so a team Michigan State should dominate, at least defensively. But positives from...
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I was going to say real quick,
No.
I think the thing you want to watch with the offensive line in week 2 is progression. It's week
Yeah.
1, so yes, you don't
I think
want
that's really all
to. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that's all really we can ask from this offense. I think people just, including myself, maybe almost expected too much out of this offense in week 1. Even though they have had all spring, summer, and stuff to learn this new scheme, supposedly it's a new offense. It's the first real game, right?
Right. Game
So
speed
timing,
is 100 times different than practice speed.
so timing is going to be off a little bit, which led to a lot of drop passes. A couple receivers ran some wrong routes. So I think things like that are things you can shore up, like the penalties. There were some chances for touchdowns out there, which Austin, watching a lot of games at Michigan State last year, there weren't chances. It wasn't just blown assignments. It was just bad offense, bad play calling, bad everything. So there was chances out there. I think now it's about execution, which, I was pretty impressed with Lewerke. He looked rusty, but he had that zip in his arm that he had in his sophomore season, especially when Austin was talking to me at the beginning of last season of him being a fringe, day 1 guy, day 2 guy in the draft, potentially, from scouts. But obviously that went way out of the chances after his last season. But he has those fundamentals back where he's throwing the ball, he's zipping it in there. There's touch on it. It's not just a duck with a dead shoulder throwing the ball. So positives there with him. Running backs, I mean, I want to see a little less Connor Hayward.
I agree.
I think he has a role on this team, but it's not as the every down back. I want to see more Eli Collins, and if Anthony Williams is healthy after hearing him, if D'Antonio raved about him all camp just to tease me and not let me see him, I'd be very upset. That's all I've heard about is this Anthony Williams kid as a true freshman. So he's apparently banged up. He's going to be a game time decision, hoping we see him. Ladarius Jefferson, I still feel, is a project there. He was a quarterback out of high school, true freshman last year, showed some flashes. He's super elusive, but he just doesn't seem to have that vision. And when you have an O-line that's not the greatest, vision's that much more important. So there's some things to keep an eye on, obviously, next week against Western Michigan, like who's going to step up for Jalen Naylor. I think the obvious answer right away is Lars Nelson. He is the next guy up in the slot type role. For those Julian Barnett fans, Austin, I don't know if you remember the name, but he was the cornerback coming into the class, the second best recruit. He is now a receiver this year. People wanting to see him. You got to remember, he's going to be more of an outside guy, big play type deep threat, more than a slot route running, run after catch type guy. So if you see him on the field, I think they slide Darrell Stewart inside and then maybe put Barnett outside. But I think D'Antonio's going to, and the Brad Salem, the new OC, is going to want more speed on the inside at the slot, which would be what Lars Nelson would be able to do. And a name to keep your eye on would be Trey Mosley, a true freshman wide receiver who we thought was going to be redshirted, but he's a guy who could come in. The opportunity's there. If Lars Nelson doesn't perform, I mean, you got guys who are going to get opportunities. So, unlike last year where we had injuries left and right at the receiver position, where, believe it or not, we're actually pretty deep there this year. So, the injury sucks, and I'm super bummed because Jalen Naylor was going to be one of my favorite players, especially on the offensive side of the ball, but it is what it is. I mean, you can't change a broken foot. It's not going to heal overnight. So he's out for the season. So look to see who steps up in his place. I don't really have much on Western Michigan for you. I don't think they're going to be very good this year. Also, I don't know if you're a Western Michigan guru, but I think they went like 3-9 last year.
Yeah, no, not since
PJ Fleck was there.
PJ Fleck rode the boat out of there, and then Corey Davis left. So
they beat Monmouth. They beat Monmouth 48-13 in week 1.
Great.
So, yeah.
There's a Monmouth. That sounds like a fish.
I think I've seen them once in the NCAA tournament before.
Oh.
That's really all
You know what? I have seen them. Their basketball celebrations were like really, really, really cool.
Oh,
They
okay.
had some
So
really
bench
good
mob.
bench basketball celebrations like 2 years ago.
Well,
If it's the same team.
their passing defense wasn't great. John Wasenick on Western Michigan apparently is their quarterback, threw 5 touchdowns, and he was 20 for 25 for almost 400 yards. And then what to watch? It's going to be a fun test for the rush defense. Western Michigan does have a running back in Levante Bellamy who's pretty good, although he struggled his first game, only averaging 2.9 yards per carry. So it looks like on offense, their wide receiver that's a playmaker to watch out for is Deshaun Bustle. He had 5 catches for 116 yards. So obviously you're going to want to put Josiah Scott on him. They would have that. God, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. The kid who just transferred to Michigan State, who was a freshman All-American for them last year. I believe his name was Jalen Reed. Well, we'll figure that out later. Michigan State fans know what I'm talking about. Would help if we could get immediate eligibility for him this year, but that's not happening. So honestly, kind of shocked with how easily guys get eligibility right away, which will be a topic I'm sure we'll talk about in the future. I think we talked about it a little bit last season, but so obviously Western Michigan, a team that you obviously should beat and need to beat, but a little better than Tulsa, I would assume. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, what little weird thing, John Lester is the pitcher. I think his last name is Lester. I'm forgetting what his first name is, the head coach of Western Michigan, but Tim Lester. I don't know if he's like trying to throw like a curveball at us, but he straight up said that they're just going to try to run short passes on us all game, which if he means that, it's not a bad game plan because we struggle with that, but I mean, you really want to go out there and just publicly give out your game plan? So kind of curious on his real meaning behind that comment. But so we'll see what he tries to do offensively, but a weird tactic in my opinion.
I would guess it would be to tire out the defensive line because obviously they're coached to play hard. They chase, they pursue all that good stuff. If they're chasing guys to the outside, one, they're not going to get any pressure on the quarterback, and they're just going to be running the sideline every play. That's going to tire them out. So, but I would say Michigan State has the sideline-to-sideline linebackers that you really, as a defensive lineman, unless you really want to or you're told to, that's not really your primary concern. And, someone like Kenny Willikis just get his big paws up or get a push to try and influence a throw. And then you got guys like Joe Bacci going, heat-seeking missile going in there and blowing it up. So I think either way, I understand the concept, trying to be quick, neutralize the pass rush. That's kind of like the extension of your running game because it's going to be really tough to run between the tackles. But I think either way, it's not going to work. So
yeah, and in the past, especially Northwestern has eaten Michigan State alive with short passes because our former defensive coordinator, Harlan Barnett, who is now doing great things with Florida State. I don't know if you can sense the sarcasm in my voice. He took more money, left, and it's been a blessing for us because Tressel, our DC now, is creative with defense. He's not afraid to get back to classic Michigan State defense, which was a no-fly zone with Derek Wisenard, Trey Waynes, and all those guys. When Narduzzi, who is the head coach of Pitt now, was just play press in your face type football. So we're kind of getting back to that a little bit. We're not afraid to press now. So, we'll see what happens. Obviously still, quick passes, if they can execute them, defense is going to have to be on its toes and aware of everything. But I think I can trust this defense to do that for me. Real quick before we move on here, just a couple guys that really surprised me against Tulsa, Austin, was one thing that I was really impressed with, which you brought up that they needed, was a speed guy off the edge. And Jacob Panashuk, Big Mike Panashuk's little brother, was explosive. And I know it's Tulsa's O-line, but he had that quick first step, Austin, that I haven't seen us have since probably a guy like Shalik Calhoun that could just beat the guy one-on-one and get to the quarterback. Obviously, it's week 1, it's Tulsa, so I'm not comparing him to Shalik Calhoun in that aspect yet, but he was just getting to the quarterback. I haven't seen us have speed off the edge in a while. We've had two like power ends for a long time now. So hopefully that continues. Another guy was Antoine Simmons, junior linebacker, who's taken over for Andrew Dowell, who is, I don't know if he's in the NFL, but he graduated last year, so he gone. But Simmons was great in pass coverage, great in the run game, and had a couple pass rush situations. He had one sack. He completely juked out the running back on a block and just pummeled the quarterback. He blew up a screenplay where he hammered the running back in the backfield, just threw the tight end, I believe, to the side, and really blew the screenplay up. So again, it's Tulsa, and I get it, but it's good to see signs like this of guys that weren't necessarily full-time players last year who are kind of stepping into the role of being that full-time guy and doing their job. And, you know, we all, like I've said it plenty of times, we all know the talent level of Tulsa, but I think what you ask for in games like this is guys to just be in situations to make plays and end up making them and not make bonehead decisions. And they were sound. They were fundamentally sound. They made plays. That's really all you can ask of them in a game like that. So impressed with those two. And then offensively, Eli Collins, the few runs he did get, super shifty kid. Hopefully look forward to seeing more carries for him against Western Michigan to kind of get this run game going, because it was not pretty awesome. I don't even know if I want to look at these yards per carry numbers, but we're going to do it to myself. But I know I think Connor Hayward had one okay run, but I mean, I know you're not a huge fan of his.
It's not that I'm not a huge fan. He reminds me of Xander Horvath for Purdue. You know, we'll give you the tough yards.
Yep.
He's a good runner, but when you're looking for some explosive plays in the run game, you know, not my first option. So
yeah. So your rushing stats here were, I guess Lewerke wasn't really that, but there was a lot of drop passes. Lewerke was 21 for 37. The good thing though is what Lewerke's been known for, regardless of who the opponent is turning the ball over. He did not make one mistake where it was even almost an interception. So he sailed some passes, but there was no like, uh-oh, what are you doing type moments that he normally gives us in a game. So was thankful for that. Rocky Lombardi came in 1 for 1. Look at him. Yeah, Connor Hayward, 15 carries for 43 yards, Austin. Not great.
Yeah, that's not the greatest.
Lewerke had 7 carries for 34 yards, which is 4.9 yards per carry. Whatever. Elijah Collins came in, had 8 carries for 17 yards. Not good either, but he showed flashes. Ladarius Jefferson, this is the stat of the day, 7 carries for 8 yards. Not what you want. So,
yeah.
While the receivers really didn't have a good game either. Darrell Stewart had 6 catches, and the next most was 3 for Connor Hayward and 2 for Ladarius Jefferson. So there was a lot of. That's one thing I wanted to bring up. There was a lot of something that annoyed me was the screens. They kept calling screens. Instead of the short side wide receiver reverse, Austin, it was wide receiver screens. It was super annoying. But we're going to move on from that. Obviously, hopefully Western Michigan, we can pull out the W. Getting into the fun part of the show, try to fly through this real quick. So let's see here. What we got first? All right, Michigan State. Obviously, we're just talking about them. We'll start with them. Michigan State welcoming Western Michigan to East Lansing. Austin, Michigan State's giving them 16 points. What do you think here?
So that's Michigan State wins by 16?
Yeah, they're giving them, so they're handing 6. So essentially, starting the game, Western Michigan's up 16-0. So if Michigan State won 30-14, then it'd be a push. So Western Michigan would win. So Michigan State's got to beat them by more than 16 points.
Yeah, I'll take that.
I agree with you. I think, which I thought was going to be a more better offensive performance against Tulsa. I think Michigan State's going to really try to prove everybody wrong, since especially they got booed by their own crowd week 1, which is not a good sign. Your boys going up against Vandy, giving Vandy 7 points here. You think Purdue covers, Austin?
Oh boy. You know what? I don't. I
Okay.
think it's closer than. I don't think Purdue wins by 7.
I agree, which is boring. Hopefully we disagree on some of these. I think I predicted Purdue winning 28-24. I'm going to stick with something similar to that. I think it's going to be a really tough game, but I think Purdue edges them out by 3 or 4 points. So we'll both go with that. Now going into the there's 2 huge games this weekend, which I'm really excited for. Texas A&M at Clemson, Austin. Clemson is giving the number 12 team in the country 17.5 points.
Oh boy. Oh man, I think I'm taking the under here. There's no way Clemson blows out A&M by that much. I don't think so.
It's tough, man. I mean, I was listening to another podcast today. They were talking about this game. It's like a sports gambling show almost for football, like with spreads and stuff, and it is tricky. Normally when you see spreads like this, you kind of think you have to take the underdog, right? But generally in games like this where the spread is this big and a difference between top 15 teams, believe it or not, the team that's favored by that much ends up covering. So I'm going to go a little risky here, and I'm going to say Clemson, even though they struggled a little bit week 1 and didn't look the greatest against Georgia Tech, I think they beat Texas A&M by 3 touchdowns. My favorite game of the week, LSU at Texas. LSU's giving them 6.5 points. So either you have faith LSU can beat them by a touchdown or you don't.
Oh boy. It's at Texas. Boy, you know
Which is
what?
kind of cool. You don't normally see a lot of these. You see a lot of neutral site games. I think it's kind of cool that they're going to Texas.
Yeah. You know, I'm gonna take. I'll take the over. I think LSU wins by 7 or more.
I agree. I kind of upset I didn't pick LSU as my sleeper for the playoff. I like this team a lot. They kind of had like a fast-paced offense almost, Austin, in their first game. And Joe Burrow didn't look bad.
Yeah, and that's what I think. You know, LSU I feel like has always kind of started really slowly when they start the season. And I think obviously it was an easy opponent, but the way they handled their business, I think LSU is one of those teams in the SEC. If they can beat Alabama, they have a really, really, really good shot at going into the playoff, in my opinion. They've got a complete team, but really their issue has always been quarterback. Joe Burrow has settled in now. He's got a year under his belt at LSU, so I would be careful. And I think as much as I love Texas, LSU is going to be more ready to play than what I would say Georgia would be. Georgia coming off that hangover of losing to Bama in the SEC championship game. So I think LSU wins, and I think they can do it by a touchdown.
Yeah, and I think this is a really big test for Texas's quarterback. Obviously, if he can go out and light up LSU, I mean, he's a legit Heisman candidate, but I mean, he goes up against Big 12 defenses, which aren't comparable to the SEC defenses. So you get them at home. It's a huge game for Texas. This is another one of those is Texas back type games. And I think Texas defense is a little overrated. I think LSU finally has a quarterback they can trust in Joe Burrow. And I think this has the potential to get ugly. I don't think it gets ugly, but I think LSU can win by 7 to 10 points. So I'm with you there. I thought this game was interesting because of how much hype Nebraska is getting. And they're traveling to Colorado and only giving 4 points. Colorado has a really potent offense, apparently, so this game is kind of tricky.
I'm going to take the upset. I think
I'm with you.
Colorado wins at home. Elevation. I did not know Nebraska's offense was literal trash in their first game. I mean, they were terrible. The only reason they won was because the defense produced 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
So Colorado is not exactly a powerhouse in themselves. They had a year where they were ranked high, but they've what's his name, the receiver that plays there
At Colorado, that tall kid, right?
yes, he'll probably be a first rounder. Excellent receiver, so it'll be a good test for Nebraska. But I think the hype ends pretty quickly. Although I do think I picked them as a sleeper in the Big Ten, so I think Colorado wins at home there.
Yeah, that's that Shane Nault Jr. kid. Yeah, he's like 6'2", 220 or something like that. He's a big boy. He might even, I feel like he's taller than 6'2". I don't know why that website's saying that. But yeah, Colorado's got some talent. I think they still have that quarterback there too. Oh God, what's his? This is gonna bother me. Colorado quarterback is Montez is his last name. He tore up Michigan a couple years ago as a freshman. Yeah, Steven Montez. He's a senior now. Colorado's got a really talented offense. I don't know much about Nebraska's defense. Like you said, Austin, their offense did not look good week one. Going to Colorado in the elevation, I think this has upset written all over it. Another Big Ten game. Army goes to Michigan in a game where I thought would be tricky, but Army played one of the worst teams in Division I football in Rice that might not win one game this year and won 14-7. Michigan's giving them 22.5 points. Do you think Army can keep it close, Austin?
I do. I'm going to take the under here, and I expect Army. I mean, I know Army lost some guys last year, but what they were able to do, hang around Oklahoma. Granted, Oklahoma's defense is not nearly as good as Michigan's, probably comparable again. But to your point that you made last week, or maybe it was earlier in the week on the Purdue podcast, the triple option, if you don't know what it looks like, it is really hard to stop. And you can simulate it and practice all you want, but it's not going to be executed as well as a team that just runs that purely. So now I don't know if Army can go in. It's at the Big House, right? So I don't think they can go in there and upset Michigan in the Big House, but I think they're not going to get just utterly destroyed either.
Yeah, I'm really torn on this one because I was a really big fan of Army coming into the season, and this game I thought could be a struggle for Michigan. Shea Patterson reportedly might be hurt after the first couple plays in the Michigan Middle Tennessee State game. They didn't look great in that game either. Michigan does have an offense that can strike fast and in big plays and score and score a lot of points. So I'm going to go with Army and stick with my gut here, partially because I dislike Michigan and partially because I think Army can keep it close. I don't think they win, but I think they can be like a 20-point, 17-point game. So we'll see what happens with that one. Let's see if we can disagree on more than one game, Austin. Nevada going to Eugene, Oregon. Oregon coming off that devastating loss versus Auburn, and Nevada coming off of a huge win against Purdue. Comeback, sorry. Not why I put the game on this on the slate. I wanted to put the Ohio State Cincy game on it, but I think this game is interesting from the standpoint of Oregon is coming off of a huge loss to Auburn, and you kind of want to see the mindset of that team because a one-loss Pac-12 team, unless they're immensely oppressive, probably doesn't get into the playoff, especially because I don't think Auburn is going to be that good this year. So, and how pumped up is Nevada coming into this game? So I think 24 points is interesting on the spread. It's a prove a game for Nevada and Oregon. So, Austin, what do you think happens here?
Boy, like to your point, 24 points.
It's a lot of points.
The line being 24 is, that's a ton of points.
That's a 4-possession game.
Boy, and I really was not. I was impressed with Oregon's offense until it Purdue'd themselves, and they just kind of died in the second half. You know what? I can't take that. I think I'm going to take the under here. Okay. 24 points. I wasn't overly impressed with Oregon's offense against Auburn. I know it's an easier home opponent in Nevada, but boy, to your point, John, coming off of a kind of a big high, they'll be juiced a little bit. They're not going to win, but they'll definitely not lose by 24 points, maybe 14.
I see. I typically would agree with you, but I think Herbert's going to bounce back big. They got one of the better offensive lines in football. I think Oregon can win by like 30 points in this game. Either that or Nevada might just be really good, which would be good for you guys, honestly, if they turn out to be like Utah State did last year for Michigan State. But I think Oregon's going to come out angry with a point to prove. If they don't cover the spread, I think it's safe to say Oregon not gave up on their season, but they just didn't, go out there and give everything they had. So, me and Austin agreed on every game other than the Clemson Texas A&M game and the Nevada Oregon game. So we'll keep track of this all season, and then if we ever have a guest on the show, they'll be welcome to join us, obviously. But we'll see who's smarter between me and Austin. Definitely going to be interesting to see who comes out on top of that. Austin, did you have any surprises from week 1 or any bold predictions coming up for week 2 that you wanted to make known?
I don't think any surprises from last week. It's pretty vanilla last week in college football. No big upsets. No, not really any big games outside of the Oregon-Auburn game. I think Northern Iowa taking Iowa State into triple overtime was pretty interesting, considering Iowa State fumbled on the 2-yard line in triple overtime, and Northern Iowa reacted way too late and couldn't jump on it. And next play, Iowa State scored. So that was a fun game to watch. This week, again, kind of a vanilla-y schedule. I think Stanford USC is an interesting matchup. USC lost their starting quarterback, torn ACL for the year. Obviously, the coach there has struggled, and losing your starting quarterback is not going to help you at all. What are they going to do against Stanford? Tough defensively, but Stanford's offense did not look great against Northwestern. It was a very Stanford-Northwestern game. So I think I didn't read the news about KJ Costello, so I don't know if Stanford ruled him in or out. But
he got banged up too. I didn't know that.
He got smoked and left the game. So he had a concussion or was being precautionary for a concussion. So I would be kind of interested just to see what happens there. I think Stanford wins, but it is at USC. So just an interesting – that's probably the only other matchup that I'm looking at in the top 25 that you can kind of maybe say, oh, okay, yeah. Maybe Cal Washington, but I really think Washington's going to blow them out. Jake Eason looked really, really nice for UW.
I'm liking Washington a lot. Hopefully, obviously it was week 1, but with Oregon losing, I think Washington's obviously the team that would have to come out of the Pac-12 if they get any team out of there. So,
here's an interesting game. I got one for you. I'm looking here. Maryland or Syracuse, number 21 Syracuse goes to Maryland.
Almost put that one on there. But I wanted to I didn't want to go all Big Ten there. That's why I put that Oregon-Nevada game in there. But yeah, that's a game to look out for. Not a program changer, but if Maryland can get that win against a ranked team, I think that program is really heading in the right direction, especially after all the ugliness it went through.
Yeah.
I think they're building a program there. Obviously, first-year head coach, can't expect too much, but they've had some recruits commit there, and they got some talented running backs. I'm excited to see what they can do this year, and I think if they can beat Syracuse, they can really get this thing rolling. But for me, no surprises from week 1, like Austin said, pretty vanilla. No bold predictions, but I will say this. I think Cincinnati and Ohio State is going to be a phenomenal game, and I think it's going to be extremely close. Cincinnati, I believe, won after winning a bowl game. I think they won 11-2 last year. Their head coach is a former Ohio State staffer. I think he was an interim head coach for them for a few games too. But
it was. I think it was when Jim Tressel resigned.
Yeah,
he took over the program, and I think Ohio State went 6-6 that year.
So not great.
No, not ideal.
But and then Cincinnati's a program who gets a lot of kids that are Ohio State rejects almost. So, anytime you get a game like that, those kids this is their Super Bowl, right? So, they're going to give Ohio State everything they have. I think it does help that it's in the horseshoe. I think Ohio State comes out, winning by like 10, but I think this is going to be a nail-biter for Ohio State, and I think Cincinnati's going to play them tough. But other than that, Austin, anything else you want to say about this week coming up before I get into a quick recruiting update?
No, I don't think so. I think you covered everything that I wanted to say too.
All right, perfect. So obviously week 2 is going to be another exciting week. Hopefully Michigan State and Purdue can come out with W's. But real quick, basketball recruiting. We are trending very quickly for a highly rated 4-star recruit. Number 36 player in the country. 6'10", 230-pound center, Maddie Sissoko. He's out of Utah. I know he's not from the United States. I don't know where he's from, but he's supposed to officially visit Michigan State here in a couple weeks. But he listed Michigan State as his favorite and his team to beat, and the crystal ball predictions went all towards him right away. So he is ours to lose. Would be huge to get another big man in this, not this class, obviously, the 2020 class, to pair with Jalen Terry. Obviously Xavier Tillman might make a leap for the NBA, things like that. So would be a huge get for us. Other than that, nothing new in football recruiting wise. In basketball recruiting, it's been pretty quiet, obviously. This new season hasn't even started yet. So that's all I got for you guys there. Got a lot of kids coming in for visits this week, but nothing really notable. So other good news is that Lammy Constant, whatever his junior, that highly talented running back that we talked about a few months back, Michigan State made his top 3. So obviously, nice. You want to get on campus and try to pull away from West Virginia and LSU, but I guess anything's possible. So, Austin, I feel like I've rambled on enough tonight. If you want to take us on out here.
Yeah, no. So another exciting week 2 of football. The NFL's back this week too, so that should be fun. We've got full slate of games starting Friday night to Monday, really. Excuse me. So the Packers and Bears are playing right now. I think the Packers are up. So enjoy the football weekend. As always, I'm Austin, co-host John Emmons. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you heard tonight, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Voice of the Fan, and also give us a listen on SoundCloud. And if you could, like our page on Facebook at Voice of the Fan and follow us on Twitter at Voice of the Fan PC. Thanks, everyone.